One of history's greatest secrets has remained untouched for almost 800 years. We are talking about the final resting place of Genghis Khan, a secret guarded by legend, death, and a vast, silent landscape. This is the story of the relentless quest to find it, a journey filled with tantalizing clues, high-tech expeditions, and controversial theories that some say point to a monumental cover-up. By the end, you will understand why this ancient puzzle continues to defy the modern world and why its discovery would rewrite history. We will investigate why an entire river might have been moved to hide the truth and ask if the tomb has already been found, only to be hidden away once more. What does it truly mean for a legend to remain forever out of reach? His name was Temujin, born not into royalty but into a brutal struggle for survival on the vast Mongolian steppe. His own family was cast out and left to die after his father was poisoned, a story that begins with betrayal and unimaginable hardship. From this profound isolation, he began a decades-long campaign of unification, forging warring tribes into a single, unstoppable force through a combination of brilliant strategy, sheer will, and an understanding of both loyalty and terror. The boy named Temujin would become Genghis Khan, the universal ruler. Under his command, the Mongol Empire exploded across the continent, creating a domain that stretched from the Pacific coast of China all the way to the Caspian Sea. It remains the largest contiguous land empire ever recorded in human history. Think of the entire width of Asia, from the rice paddies of the east to the gates of Europe in the west, all under the command of one man and his legendary horse archers. This was not merely an empire of conquest, but an engine of global change. The Silk Road flourished under a period of enforced peace, connecting markets and ideas between East and West. Technologies, medicines, and knowledge flowed freely across continents, all under the watchful eye of the great Khan's administration. This context is everything. It explains why finding his tomb is not just an archaeological exercise. It is the search for the origins of this world-altering power. The burial site of the man who reshaped the globe would be the ultimate historical prize, a direct link to the genesis of an empire that changed everything. If it were found, it would not just be a collection of artifacts, but a time capsule from the very heart of a seismic shift in human history. So the question of its location is not just about where a great leader was laid to rest. It is about unlocking the final secret of the empire he built from nothing. Yet for all the power he wielded in life, his death is shrouded in just as much mystery. In 1227, the great Khan died, but the exact cause remains one of history's great unresolved debates. The official court records are silent, lost to time, leaving us with a collection of competing and often fantastical stories. Some chroniclers wrote that he succumbed to a sudden fever, perhaps an illness picked up on campaign in a foreign land. Others suggest a simple, tragic accident during a hunt, a fall from his horse that proved fatal for the aged warrior. Then there are the more dramatic tales, like the one claiming a captured princess from a conquered kingdom ended his life with a hidden blade, a final act of defiance. We will likely never know the precise truth because the moment he passed, an operation of absolute secrecy began. His most trusted generals and members of his personal guard were tasked with one final, sacred duty. They were to carry the body of their leader home, back to the sacred lands of Mongolia where he was born. This was not a funeral procession, it was a covert mission. The column moved in strict silence across the vast steppe, and according to a chilling legend that persists to this day, they left no witnesses. It is said that every single person unfortunate enough to cross their path was immediately put to the sword. This was not an act of random cruelty, but a calculated, brutal measure to erase the route itself from human memory. The soldiers carrying the body were even rumored to have been killed by a second, trailing unit of guards, who were then themselves eliminated upon their return. This layered secrecy ensured that the knowledge of the journey died with those who made it. The goal was absolute. The final resting place of Genghis Khan must never, ever be found. The desire for secrecy went far beyond the actions of his loyal soldiers. It was a principle that Genghis Khan himself reportedly decreed long before his death. He is said to have given explicit orders for his burial, demanding a funeral of absolute silence and a tomb with no marker, no mound, no permanent sign whatsoever to show where he lay. This was not merely a paranoid whim of a powerful ruler. It was rooted in the deepest spiritual beliefs of the Mongol people. They held a profound reverence for the earth, seeing it as a living, sacred entity. To disturb the ground with large, permanent structures was a kind of sacrilege. A simple return to the land without a trace was the most honorable and respectful way for a soul to find peace. But there was also a brutally practical motivation woven into this spiritual view. Genghis Khan knew his empire was built on a foundation of fear and respect, and that he had made countless enemies across the world. A visible tomb, no matter how grand, would become a target. It would be a monument for his foes to desecrate, a place for them to exact their revenge upon his remains. He could not allow that. His legacy, his very spirit, had to be protected from the hatred he had sown. So his final command created the ultimate paradox. The most powerful man of his age, who commanded the largest land empire in history, chose to vanish without a trace. This single decision is the primary reason the search has been so profoundly difficult for centuries. How do you find something that was designed from the very beginning to be unfindable? You are not looking for a pyramid or a grand mausoleum. You are searching for a secret deliberately woven back into the fabric of the earth itself. This single command to vanish gave rise to one of history's most haunting legends. Among the many stories, one stands out for its sheer, audacious scale. It is said that after the secret burial, the funeral escort did not merely cover the grave with dirt. Instead, they performed an act of geographical camouflage so complete it defies belief. They diverted an entire river to flow over Genghis Khan's tomb, sealing it for eternity beneath a flowing waterway. Imagine the finality of that. The most powerful man in the world was not just hidden, he was made part of the landscape itself, his coffin encased in silt and stone at the bottom of a newly created stream. The story is cinematic, a fittingly epic end for a larger-than-life figure. It suggests that for the Mongols, mere secrecy was not enough. They needed to build a natural, self-renewing monument that would erase all evidence forever. But could such a feat have been possible in the 13th century? From an engineering standpoint, it is not as far-fetched as it might seem. The Mongols were masters of adaptation and siege warfare, and they routinely absorbed the technical knowledge of the civilizations they conquered. Chinese engineers, for instance, had been managing and diverting massive waterways for centuries. A task force of skilled laborers and soldiers, driven by a sacred duty, could potentially reroute a small or medium-sized river over a period of weeks or months. It would not require moving mountains, just redirecting a single flow of water. This very plausibility is what makes the legend so compelling and so dangerous for modern searchers. It has fundamentally shaped the entire quest. If the tomb lies under a riverbed, then traditional archaeology is useless. You cannot dig where a river flows. This idea has sent researchers and explorers down a very different path. They have turned to the skies using satellite imagery and advanced aerial photography to scan the vast Mongolian landscape. Their search is not for mounds or structures, but for geographical anomalies. They are looking for the ghosts of rivers past, for ancient, dried-up riverbeds that do not fit the current hydrological map. A strange curved scar on the earth, visible only from above, could be the signature of that ancient, deliberate diversion. Every twist and turn in the terrain becomes a potential clue, a sign that the earth itself was reshaped to keep one man's secret. This legend transforms the entire search area from a simple piece of land into a dynamic, changing puzzle where the very rivers might be lying. This final, brutal layer of the secret is perhaps the most chilling. Beyond the redirected rivers and the unmarked earth, history whispers of a human sacrifice on an unimaginable scale. The story goes that after the body of the great Khan was laid to rest, the soldiers who oversaw the burial turned their weapons on the very laborers who had built the tomb. Every slave who dug the grave, every artisan who prepared the chamber, was systematically executed. But the horror did not end there. It is said that the soldiers who carried out these killings were then themselves killed by a separate, loyal unit, creating a chain of silence where each link was deliberately broken. The secret would be safe because everyone who knew it was dead. Where does such a dark story come from? The primary source is the Persian historian Malik Juvayni, who wrote his account within a few decades of Genghis Khan's death. Juvayni states clearly that the funeral escort killed every person they met on their journey, and that the slaves who built the tomb were put to death. Later, the Venetian explorer Marco Polo would also record a similar grim tradition. For centuries, this narrative has been accepted as a tragic, if logical, conclusion to the mission of absolute secrecy. From a cold, strategic perspective, it makes a terrible kind of sense. How else could you guarantee that a secret of such world-shaking importance would never be revealed? The lives of a few thousand soldiers and slaves were a small price to pay for the eternal security of a god-like ruler's resting place. Yet this raises profound ethical questions that echo through time. Can we, in our modern world, even comprehend a mindset where such an act was considered not just acceptable, but a sacred, necessary duty? This was not simple cruelty. It was a calculated, final command in service of a legacy. The value of a single human life was weighed against the value of an entire empire's spiritual and political foundation, and was found insignificant. This story forces us to confront the terrifying power dynamics of the ancient world, where a ruler's will was absolute, and his peace in death was deemed more important than the lives of those who served him. It adds a deeply human cost to the mystery. The search for the tomb is not just a quest for treasure or knowledge. It is also, in a way, a search for the unmarked graves of all those who were silenced to protect it. Their blood is the final, invisible seal upon the secret, a grim reminder of the extreme price paid to make one man disappear forever. This sacred ground is known as Ik-Korig, the Great Taboo. For centuries, this sprawling, mountainous region in the Kentai province was the heart of a real-world forbidden zone. It was not merely a legend whispered around campfires, but a legally enforced, deathly serious prohibition. The descendants of Genghis Khan, the very rulers who inherited his empire, declared the entire area absolutely off-limits. They posted a permanent guard of elite warriors around its perimeter, and the penalty for any unauthorized person attempting to enter was immediate execution. This was not a suggestion, it was the law of the land, a law upheld with terrifying consistency for generations. Why would an empire go to such extreme lengths to protect an empty stretch of wilderness? The answer seems self-evident. They were guarding something of immense foundational importance, something so sacred that its violation would threaten the very soul of their power. The land itself became the tomb's first and most formidable guardian. The terrain of Ik-Korig is a natural fortress perfectly designed to keep its secrets. It is a brutally rugged landscape of dense forests, jagged peaks, and deep, shadowy valleys. There are no roads, only ancient game trails known to local herders. The weather is unpredictable and often harsh, with blizzards that can appear without warning and summers that bring swarms of insects. This is not a place for casual exploration. To venture into Ik-Korig is to confront the raw, untamed power of nature, a power that has defied modern technology and human curiosity for centuries. Every cliff face and every hidden ravine could be the final, unmarked resting place. The combination of human-enforced terror and natural, geographical defense created a perfect storm of isolation. It is as if the land and its people conspired together to maintain the silence, weaving a protective shield so powerful that even the most determined seekers were turned back, their questions left unanswered by the imposing, silent mountains. The silent guardians of Ik held their secrets tight, but a new era of exploration was dawning. By the early 20th century, the world had grown smaller, and the legend of the lost tomb began to lure Western adventurers armed with maps and a boundless confidence. These were not scholars quietly studying ancient texts. They were field men, explorers who saw the vastness of Mongolia not as a sacred barrier, but as the ultimate challenge. The most famous of them all was Roy Chapman Andrews, a man whose life story seems ripped from an adventure novel. As the leader of the American Museum of Natural History's Central Asiatic expeditions in the 1920s, Andrews was a real-life Indiana Jones, a charismatic figure who was often photographed standing on a car, wearing a wide-brimmed hat with a revolver on his hip. He plunged into the Gobi Desert with a fleet of Dodge cars and a small army of scientists, drivers, and camel handlers. His stated mission was to find the origins of early man, but he and everyone else knew he was also hunting for a far grander prize. The whispers of Genghis Khan's tomb were a constant lure, a shadow mission that drove him deeper into the most forbidding landscapes on Earth. He did make incredible discoveries, unearthing the first known dinosaur eggs in a stunning find that captured global headlines. But the tomb of the great Khan remained as elusive as ever. Why did these ambitious, well-funded expeditions fail so completely? The answer lies in a fundamental mistake. These early searchers were often looking in the wrong places, guided by flawed interpretations of history. They focused heavily on the arid Gobi Desert, partly because some historical sources vaguely mentioned the Khan dying in a place called the Lu Pan Mountains, which they incorrectly placed in the Gobi. They were searching for a grand, visible monument, a mausoleum fit for an emperor, completely missing the core Mongol tradition of an unmarked, hidden grave. They were applying a Western logic of burial to a culture that had deliberately rejected it. The political landscape was just as treacherous as the physical one. This was a time of immense upheaval in the region. Mongolia had just declared its independence from China, and the new Soviet Union was exerting its influence from the north. Warlords and bandits roamed the countryside, and a foreign expedition with expensive cars and equipment was a tempting target. Andrews himself wrote about the constant threat of armed conflict, noting that his team was always prepared for a fight. The sheer, overwhelming vastness of the terrain was the final, insurmountable obstacle. You can drive for days in the Gobi and see nothing but an unbroken horizon. You can trek for weeks in the Kentiai Mountains and find only another identical forested valley. Without precise local knowledge, which the foreign explorers deliberately did not have, the search was like trying to find a single, unmarked pebble on an endless beach. These early attempts, for all their daring and ambition, were ultimately searching for a ghost with the wrong map in a land that was actively resisting them. They proved that courage and technology were not enough to break an 800-year-old silence. The high-tech expeditions of the 1920s gave way to a new kind of search decades later, one that swapped adventure for advanced science. In the early 1990s, a monumental joint project was launched between Japan and Mongolia, named the Gurvan Project after a river in the very heart of the forbidden Ik. This was the most serious, well-funded, and technologically sophisticated effort ever mounted to solve the mystery. It represented a complete shift in strategy. Instead of relying on cars and camels, the international team of archaeologists and scientists turned to the sky. They analyzed high-resolution satellite photographs, looking for subtle, unnatural patterns in the terrain invisible to the human eye. They flew over the rugged landscape with aerial surveys, mapping every contour of the land with unprecedented detail. And on the ground, they deployed ground-penetrating radar, a device that can peer deep into the earth without ever lifting a shovel, sending out signals to create a sonic picture of what lies buried below. For the first time, it seemed science had finally developed the tools to bypass 8 centuries of silence. The initial results were electrifying. The surveys did not find one single promising site, they found dozens. Across the vast expanse of the Forbidden Zone, the technology revealed the outlines of numerous ancient structures and burial sites hidden just beneath the surface. Each one was a potential candidate, a secret waiting to be uncovered. Yet this abundance of data created its own profound problem. Which one was the right one? The team conducted targeted excavations, carefully unearthing several of these sites. What they found was historically significant but ultimately disappointing. They uncovered the remains of ancient nobles, important tribal leaders from different eras, and various ritual monuments. These were the burials of powerful figures, but none matched the world-shaking importance of the Great Khan. There was no grand chamber, no unique artifact, nothing that could serve as a definitive, undeniable link to Genghis Khan himself. The project was suspended not for a lack of trying, but because of the very nature of the secret they were chasing. The technology, for all its power, could only show them shapes in the ground. It could not tell them who was buried there. Faced with a mountain of possibilities and no way to narrow them down without potentially desecrating a culturally sacred site, the scientists had to admit defeat. The most advanced search in history had proven one thing conclusively. The tomb was not just hidden by dirt and stone, it was hidden by the sheer number of other secrets buried alongside it. Amidst the dozens of promising sites, one discovery stood out, a place the locals called the Almsgivers' Wall. This was not a simple burial mound. It was an entire complex, a sprawling center of activity dating precisely to the 13th and 14th centuries, the golden age of the Mongol Empire. Archaeologists carefully unearthed the foundations of Buddhist temples, their layouts suggesting a place of significant pilgrimage and worship. They found the remains of smithies where metalworkers forged not weapons but intricate ritual objects. Most tellingly, they excavated the graves of high-status individuals, nobles laid to rest with honor near this sacred ground. The evidence was undeniable. The Almsgivers' Wall was a major ritual center, a hub of spiritual and political power operating at the very heart of the Forbidden Zone during the reign of Genghis Khan's descendants. For a moment, the mystery seemed solved. This had to be it. The sheer scale and importance of the site felt like a perfect match for the world's greatest lost tomb. The excitement was palpable, the hope that 800 years of searching had finally reached its end. Yet, as the dust settled and every stone was turned, a sobering reality took hold. For all its grandeur, the Almsgivers' Wall was not the final answer. They found no burial chamber inscribed with the name of the Great Khan. There was no unique artifact, no seal, nothing that could definitively state this was the spot. The complex was a vital piece of the puzzle, proving beyond doubt that Ik-Korig was the sacred core of the empire, a place where the elite came to connect with their ancestors and their gods. But it was a place for Genghis Khan, not the tomb of Genghis Khan. It was the temple in the sacred precinct, not the Holy of Holies itself. The find was simultaneously a monumental success and a profound disappointment. It confirmed they were searching in the right area, but it also revealed a deeper, more frustrating truth. The tomb was not just hidden in a forgotten valley. It was hidden in plain sight, camouflaged within a landscape so rich with other important ruins that picking out the one that mattered most was nearly impossible. The secret was protected by a crowd of other secrets, all demanding attention, all whispering different stories from the past. But the scientific surveys of the 90s were not the only quest driven by obsession. For Chicago attorney Maury Kravitz, the search for Genghis Khan was not a professional project, but a lifelong passion that consumed his time and his personal fortune. He was a classic amateur historian, a man captivated by a single, burning idea that professional archaeologists had largely dismissed: Kravitz became convinced that everyone was looking in the wrong place. He argued that the tomb was not hidden in the misty, forbidden mountains of Korig, but hundreds of miles to the south, in the stark, beautiful desolation of the Flaming Cliffs. This region, known locally as Bayanzak, is world-famous for its rich deposits of dinosaur fossils, a place where the bones of prehistoric giants bake in the sun. Kravitz pored over ancient texts, including the secret history of the Mongols, and interpreted certain passages as a cryptic map pointing directly to this dramatic landscape. He believed the red sandstone cliffs glowing like fire at sunset were the true, forgotten guardians of the Great Khan. For more than 2 decades, he poured his energy and resources into proving this theory, mounting multiple private expeditions into the heart of the Gobi. His teams faced the same brutal challenges as the explorers who came before him: the searing heat, the shifting sands, and the sheer, disorienting vastness of the desert. They employed metal detectors and local guides, searching for any sign, any artifact that could validate his grand hypothesis. Yet despite his unwavering conviction and years of effort, the Flaming Cliffs yielded no definitive proof. No hidden chamber was found, no unique treasure was unearthed. The landscape kept its secrets, leaving Kravitz's compelling theory stuck in the realm of intriguing speculation, a testament to how a single, powerful idea can capture a person's life, even when the earth refuses to give up its answer. While treasure hunters scoured the deserts and scientists scanned the mountains, another group of seekers turned to a very different kind of map. This map was not made of parchment or satellite images, but of words. The Secret History of the Mongols is the single most important literary source for the life of Genghis Khan, an epic poem written in the 13th century, shortly after his death. It is not a dry, factual chronicle. It is a foundational myth, a family saga, and a political document all woven into one, filled with poetic verses, spiritual visions, and dramatic dialogues. For researchers, this text is both a priceless treasure and an infuriating riddle. Its descriptions of places are often lyrical and symbolic rather than precise, as if the authors were more concerned with capturing the spirit of the land than providing clear coordinates. Generations of scholars have pored over every line, searching for the hidden geographical clues that could lead to the ultimate prize. They are not just reading history, they are trying to decode a centuries-old cipher. One name echoes throughout the text with particular resonance: Birken Kolden. This mountain is not a minor landmark in the story, it is a central character. The Secret History describes a young Temujin fleeing from his enemies, finding refuge and salvation on its forested slopes. He prays to the mountain, making an offering of his belt and his horse, and in return, he receives divine protection that allows him to survive and eventually begin his rise to power. In the spiritual worldview of the Mongols, this act forged an unbreakable bond between the man and the mountain. It was not just a place of hiding, it became his personal protector, a sacred entity that shepherded him toward his destiny. This profound connection is why Birken Kolden has become the focal point for virtually every modern search. The logic is compelling and deeply human. Where would a person choose to be buried? In a random, secret location, or in the one place on Earth that they believe saved their life? The place where they felt the closest connection to the divine. For a man like Genghis Khan, the answer seems obvious. He would return to the bosom of his protector. The mountain itself would become his eternal tombstone. This interpretation has transformed the search, narrowing the vastness of Korig to a single, majestic peak. Expeditions now concentrate their efforts on and around Birken Kolden, using the ancient text as their guide. They scan its ravines and survey its high plateaus, believing the cryptic poetry of the Secret History is the closest they will ever get to a direct instruction from the Great Khan himself. The mountain stands silent, holding its secret within a story that everyone can read, but whose final chapter remains forever out of reach. Birken Kolden is not just a mountain, it is a living monument to a legend. This majestic peak, now recognized by the world as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, stands as the spiritual heart of the entire search. Its forested slopes are the very place where history tells us a young Temujin, hunted and desperate, found sanctuary from his enemies. He did not merely hide there, he communed with the mountain, praying and making offerings of his belt and his horse. In return, he believed the spirit of the mountain granted him protection and the divine right to forge an empire. This was not a fleeting moment of gratitude, it was the forging of a sacred bond. For the rest of his life, Genghis Khan viewed Burkhan Khaldun as his personal guardian, a celestial father figure woven into the very rock and soil. So where else would such a man choose to be laid to rest but in the embrace of his protector? This powerful logic has made the mountain the undeniable focal point for modern archaeologists. Their surveys have meticulously scanned every ridge and valley, and what they have found is both revealing and mysterious. They have uncovered the remains of ancient ceremonial platforms, stone structures built into the mountainside that were clearly used for important rituals. They have found the foundations of small temples and evidence of sustained human activity dating back to the 13th century. These are not the marks of a random wilderness, they are the signatures of a sacred landscape, a place of pilgrimage and worship for the Mongol elite. The evidence screams that this was a place of supreme importance, a spiritual capital for the empire. Yet, for all these tantalizing clues, the central mystery remains stubbornly intact. The ceremonial platforms point to a culture of veneration, but they do not point directly to a tomb. They confirm that this is the right neighborhood, but the exact address of the Great Khan's resting place is still missing. The mountain gives just enough to keep the hope alive while guarding its ultimate secret with a silence that has lasted 800 years. This idea of a sacred landscape, not just a single hidden grave, opens up a far more compelling possibility. What if the forbidden zone of Ik-Korig was not merely guarding one tomb, but an entire field of them? This is the Mongolian Valley of the King's Theory, a concept that reframes the entire search. Imagine the ancient Egyptian Valley of the Kings, a desolate wadi near Thebes where pharaohs were interred in a concentrated area of royal tombs, hidden away from tomb robbers and public view. Now transplant that concept to the Mongolian steppe. The theory suggests that the vast protected expanse of Ik-Korig served the same purpose. It was a secret royal necropolis, the final resting place not only for Genghis Khan but for his most important successors, his sons, and the great Khans who followed him. This was not a cemetery in the traditional sense. It was a hidden city of the dead reserved for the imperial family. Suddenly, the extreme measures of secrecy make perfect sense on a grander scale. The diverted rivers and the eliminated witnesses were not just for one man. They were to protect an entire dynasty's spiritual heart. The death penalty for entering the zone was not just about one grave, it was about defending a hallowed ground that contained the founders of the empire itself. This explains why the area declared taboo was so immense. You would not need to cordon off a mountain range for a single burial site, no matter how important. But you would need that kind of geographical fortress to conceal a network of royal tombs scattered across valleys and ridges. This theory also elegantly explains the frustrating results of the high-tech surveys in the 1990s. When scientists found dozens of promising burial sites, they were not just finding false leads or the graves of minor nobles. They were likely looking at the very evidence for this royal necropolis. Each significant structure they uncovered could have been the tomb of a different Khan, a different prince, or a different queen. The almsgivers' wall complex, with its temples and workshops, fits this model perfectly. It would have been the central ceremonial site for this city of the dead, the place where rituals were performed for all the ancestors interred in the surrounding wilderness. Finding Genghis Khan's tomb, then, becomes a different kind of challenge. It is not about finding the only needle in a haystack. It is about finding the most important needle in a haystack filled with other, slightly less important needles. The discovery of any one major tomb would not be the end of the quest, but the beginning. It would be the key that unlocks the entire necropolis, providing the archaeological context and burial customs that would finally point the way to the founder himself. The secret was never just one location. The secret was the entire valley. This new technological frontier has fundamentally changed the quest. We have moved from shovels and speculation to tools that can see through the very earth. Ground-penetrating radar is like a medical scanner for the planet, sending pulses of energy deep into the soil and reading the echoes that bounce back from buried structures. It can reveal the ghostly outline of a wall, the hollow space of a chamber, or the disturbed earth of a burial pit, all without breaking the surface. Magnetometry complements this by mapping tiny variations in the Earth's magnetic field, pinpointing where ancient fires burned or where metal objects lie corroding in the ground. And now, drones soar over the most inaccessible terrain, capturing high-resolution, three-dimensional maps of every slope and ravine, creating a perfect digital replica of the landscape for archaeologists to study from halfway across the world. These are the ultimate non-invasive detectives, allowing us to look without touching, to search without disturbing. Yet this incredible power creates a profound ethical conflict. We possess the tools to finally locate what an entire empire dedicated itself to hiding. The same technology that can unlock 800 years of history could also be seen as violating a sacred 800-year-old promise. The Mongol people, for whom Genghis Khan is a revered national father and a spiritual figure, have watched these scientific expeditions with deep apprehension. For many, this is not an archaeological dig, it is a potential desecration. The belief is powerful and deeply held. To disturb the resting place of the great Khan would be to unleash a terrible curse, or worse, to violate the spiritual peace of a founding ancestor. The lengths to which the original guardians went to protect the site were not just about secrecy, they were about honor. The modern searcher, with their radar and drones, must now ask a difficult question. Does our curiosity and our desire for historical knowledge outweigh the cultural and spiritual wishes of a people? Is finding the tomb, in the end, an act of discovery or an act of disrespect? The technology gives us the ability, but it does not give us the right. This is the modern dilemma at the heart of the hunt, a clash not of swords, but of values, where science and tradition stare each other down across the vast, silent Mongolian steppe. This high-tech ethical dilemma found its ultimate expression in one of the most ambitious modern quests, the Valley of the Khans project, spearheaded by Dr. Albert Lin and supported by National Geographic. This was not a traditional dig. It was a vast digital dragnet that combined the power of satellite imagery with the eyes of thousands of online volunteers from around the world. The concept was revolutionary. Instead of a small team of experts staring at endless images, they crowdsourced the search, allowing anyone with an internet connection to scan high-resolution pictures of the Mongolian landscape for subtle, unnatural patterns. It was a global team effort to solve history's greatest puzzle. For months, this virtual army of citizen scientists flagged thousands of potential anomalies, from strange rock alignments to faint geometric shapes hidden in the earth. The data was overwhelming, but the team's algorithms narrowed it down to the most promising sites. Then came the moment of truth, the ground expedition. Dr. Lin and his team journeyed into the heart of the Forbidden Zone, following the digital breadcrumbs to a remote location. Using non-invasive techniques like ground-penetrating radar, they surveyed the area. And there it was. The radar returns revealed a clear, man-made structure buried just beneath the surface, a rectangular arrangement of stones that was unmistakably artificial. The excitement was electric. After centuries of speculation and failed expeditions, they were standing directly above something significant, a secret preserved by the permafrost. Yet, this moment of high-tech triumph was immediately followed by a profound decision. They had the capability to excavate, to finally lift the veil. But they chose not to. The site was clearly one of immense cultural and historical importance, and the team was acutely aware of the deep-seated wishes of the Mongolian people. In a move that respected both science and spirit, they documented their findings, cordoned off the area to protect it, and handed all their data over to the Mongolian government. They walked away, leaving the secret undisturbed. This was the ultimate testament to how the search had evolved. The greatest discovery was not what they found, but what they chose to leave alone. The mystery was preserved not because it was impossible to solve, but because some secrets are meant to be kept. The decision to leave that buried structure untouched reflects a much larger truth. Across Mongolia, the official stance is not one of hesitation, but of profound protection. The government in Ulaanbaatar is not simply an obstacle to discovery, it is the modern guardian of an ancient vow. For the Mongolian people, Genghis Khan is far more than a historical figure. He is the father of the nation, the unifier who forged a single identity from a scattered collection of tribes. To disturb his final resting place is not seen as an archaeological breakthrough. It is viewed as a form of national desecration, a violation of a spiritual peace that has lasted for centuries. This sentiment is not a vague cultural preference, it is codified into law. A specific statute makes it illegal to disturb ancient grave sites, a rule that is broadly and deliberately interpreted to shield the potential tomb of the great Khan from any form of excavation. This legal barrier exists for a reason that transcends science. It is about respecting the wishes of an ancestor who explicitly commanded that his grave be left unmarked and untouched for all time. The government, in many ways, is the final line of defense, ensuring that modern curiosity does not override the sacred commands of the past. It is a powerful reminder that some mysteries are not meant to be solved by digging, but are instead meant to be honored by leaving them be. The earth itself has become the tomb's eternal guardian, and the law is its sworn protector. So the hunt turned from the landscape to the very bloodline itself. A radical new idea emerged, one that proposed we could find the great Khan not by digging in the dirt, but by mapping his genetic code in the living. This ambitious plan centered on a unique biological inheritance, the Y chromosome. This particular piece of genetic material is passed down virtually unchanged from father to son, generation after generation, creating an unbroken line that stretches directly back to a single male ancestor. The theory was as bold as it was simple. Genghis Khan, with his vast harem and many sons, left a genetic legacy that spread across his empire. His direct male descendants, who often became powerful rulers and nobles in their own right, would have carried that same Y chromosome, and they too would have had many children. Over centuries, this could have created a genetic signature that exploded across Asia. Researchers proposed that by taking DNA samples from modern men across the former Mongol Empire, they could statistically identify this shared Y chromosome lineage, pinpointing the specific genetic marker of Genghis Khan himself. It was a breathtaking concept. If they could isolate this marker, then any ancient bones suspected of being the Khan could be tested for a definitive scientific match. The tomb would not need to be identified by golden treasures or inscribed tablets, but by the most personal signature of all, his own DNA. The project launched with great fanfare, collecting thousands of samples from populations stretching from the Pacific to the Caspian Sea. And the results seemed to confirm the incredible hypothesis. The data suggested that a single star cluster Y chromosome lineage was indeed present in about 8 million men across the continent, with a striking concentration in the former Mongol heartlands. The statistics pointed to a common ancestor who lived roughly 800 years ago, right in the era of the Great Khan. It appeared that science had triumphed where archaeology had failed, providing a genetic roadmap straight back to the founder of the empire. Yet this apparent breakthrough was immediately engulfed in controversy. The scientific method itself faced intense scrutiny. critics argued that linking a specific Y chromosome to one historical figure was nearly impossible to prove. How could they be certain this lineage came from Genghis Khan and not from another powerful, prolific man from the same era, or even from an earlier tribal chieftain whose descendants were later swept up by the Mongol expansion? The historical record is filled with powerful men who fathered many children. Isolating one genetic line and naming it after a single individual, no matter how famous, was seen by many geneticists as an oversimplification of a deeply complex historical and biological process. The ethical objections were even more profound. The study was criticized for its methodology, with some accusing it of perpetuating a kind of genetic determinism that risked reducing the rich tapestry of Asian populations to the legacy of one conqueror. For many people in the region studied, the idea that their ancestry could be traced back to a Mongol invader was a sensitive and politically charged issue, reopening old wounds of conquest and domination. The project was seen by some not as a pure scientific endeavor, but as a modern form of genetic colonialism where Western researchers arrived to collect DNA and make sweeping historical claims about native populations. Ultimately, this genetic key has its own severe limitations. Even if we accept the controversial lineage, it only provides a tool for confirmation, not for discovery. You still need to find the bones first. That Y chromosome marker is useless if you have no ancient remains to test. It cannot tell you where to dig. It simply sits as a potential lock, waiting for a key that may never be found. The genetic trail, for all its modern allure, ultimately leads back to the same silent, impenetrable landscape, reminding us that the Earth still holds the final card. This brings us to the most provocative question of all. What if the search is already over? A persistent conspiracy theory suggests the tomb of Genghis Khan was found long ago, and its discovery was immediately and deliberately buried by those in power. The argument is chillingly straightforward. An archaeological find of this magnitude would be more than a historical headline. It would be a geopolitical earthquake. Imagine the implications. For Mongolia, the confirmed location of the Great Khan's tomb would instantly become the nation's ultimate spiritual and political symbol, a focal point for national identity that could galvanize the population in unpredictable ways. For neighboring China, with its own historical claims over Inner Mongolia and a vested interest in regional stability, such a discovery on its doorstep could be seen as profoundly disruptive. The theory posits that certain governments or powerful institutions made a cold calculation. The potential chaos, the surge of nationalistic fervor, the rekindling of old territorial and cultural disputes, all of it was too great a risk. It was deemed safer for the world and for their own interests if the tomb remained a legend. The secret was not just kept by the Mongols of the past, but is being actively maintained by powerful forces in the present. How plausible is this? The logic of realpolitik gives it a certain dark credibility. Nations have certainly suppressed inconvenient discoveries before to control historical narratives and maintain social order. The raw power contained in that single site, a symbol capable of uniting millions, is exactly the kind of thing that keeps intelligence agencies and policymakers awake at night. Could a team have stumbled upon it during the chaotic years of the 20th century, only to be silenced by a quiet order from somewhere high up? It is a scenario straight out of a spy thriller, but history has proven that truth can be stranger than fiction. Yet the cover-up theory also faces a monumental logistical problem. The very nature of the secret works against it. To successfully hide such a find, you would need to silence not just one archaeologist, but an entire team of diggers, drivers, and local guides. In the modern era of satellite phones and the internet, containing that kind of information leak would be nearly impossible. Someone would talk, a photograph would surface. A cryptic diary would be found. The silence surrounding the tomb feels less like a modern conspiracy and more like the enduring success of the original ancient one. The Earth itself has been the most effective conspirator, guarding its charge so well that no modern cover-up has even been necessary. The greatest secret was kept 800 years ago, and it has simply never been broken. The sudden and unexplained halt of major expeditions provides compelling fuel for the cover-up theory. Consider the ambitious Japanese and Mongolian Gol project in the 1990s, which was the most technologically advanced search ever launched. It was a multi-million-dollar, multi-year effort that identified dozens of promising sites. Then, just as the most exciting phase was set to begin, the project was abruptly suspended. Official statements cited a lack of definitive results, but insiders whispered of immense political pressure from unseen forces within the Mongolian government, forces that did not want the world's most powerful secret to be revealed. This pattern of promising searches running into invisible walls is not an isolated incident. Other well-funded teams have reported similar experiences where their permits were suddenly revoked or their funding mysteriously evaporated just as they closed in on a significant lead. The lack of transparency from certain research teams adds another layer of suspicion. Some expeditions have returned from the field with vague, carefully worded reports that reveal very little, leaving outsiders to wonder what was truly found. When pressed for details, the responses are often cloaked in academic jargon about respecting cultural sensitivities, which, while valid, can also serve as a convenient shield to hide a monumental discovery. The potential interests at play are staggering. For a nation like China, the confirmed discovery of Genghis Khan's tomb just across the border in an independent Mongolia could ignite powerful nationalist sentiments among ethnic Mongols living within China's own borders, potentially destabilizing the region. For global corporations, the rights to the artifacts, the media coverage, and even the tourism revenue from such a site would be worth billions. The narrative of a single, unified human history is a powerful commodity, and the entity that controls the tomb of Genghis Khan would wield immense influence over that story. Persistent rumors speak of secret pacts between governments and archaeological institutions, informal agreements to simply stop looking, to let sleeping Khans lie. These whispers suggest that the greatest discovery of the 21st century has already been made, and the decision was that the world is simply not ready for the truth it contains. Yet for all its intrigue, the grand conspiracy theory crumbles under the weight of a simple human reality. Keeping a secret of this magnitude in our hyper-connected world would be an impossible feat. Just think about the sheer number of people involved in any significant archaeological expedition. There are not only the lead scientists and their graduate students, but also the local guides, the drivers, the cooks, the interpreters, and the government monitors. We are talking about dozens, if not hundreds, of individuals from vastly different backgrounds and with different loyalties. In an age where a single smartphone photo can circle the globe in minutes, the idea that not one person from any of these teams would ever leak a single piece of conclusive evidence stretches credibility to its breaking point. Someone would have talked, a blurred image of a unique artifact would have surfaced on a hidden forum. A retired worker would have whispered the story to a journalist. The silence is not a sign of a successful cover-up, but a testament to a simple truth. There is nothing to cover up because the tomb has never been found. The most likely explanation is also the most straightforward. The original plan worked perfectly. The burial escort, the redirected river, the eliminated witnesses, and the sacred taboo of Ik-Korig were all stunningly effective. Genghis Khan's final command, his wish to vanish without a trace, was executed with a precision that has defied 8 centuries of curiosity. The landscape itself was his greatest ally, a vast and rugged wilderness that swallows clues and disorients even the most advanced technology. What we are witnessing is not a modern conspiracy, but the enduring success of an ancient one. The secret was kept 800 years ago, and it has simply never been broken. The tomb remains lost, not because powerful forces are hiding it, but because the great Khan and his loyal followers were just that good at their jobs. But our search cannot be confined to Mongolia alone. Competing theories insist we are looking in the wrong country altogether. Some historians and amateur sleuths argue that the true tomb lies hundreds of miles to the south, in the rolling grasslands of northern China. Their logic hinges on a pivotal moment in Genghis Khan's life, his decision to establish a permanent capital for his nomadic empire. This was the city of Karakoram, a place of immense political and symbolic power. Yet the theory suggests his final resting place might be near an even more significant location, his original capital in China, a place from which he launched his conquest of the Jin dynasty. The argument is one of legacy. Why would the ruler of a continent-spanning empire be buried in a remote, wild mountain when he could be interred near the very seat of his earthly power, in a location befitting his status as a world emperor? Proponents of this idea point to Chinese historical texts that are often vague or deliberately misleading, sometimes referring to a grand burial in a region they controlled. They suggest that later Chinese dynasties seeking to co-opt the legend of the Great Khan may have fostered stories that his tomb was within their borders, thus legitimizing their own rule over the lands he once conquered. The persistence of this theory in popular culture speaks to a simpler, more cinematic desire, the hope that such a monumental figure must have a monumental tomb, not a hidden grave. We want pyramids, not unmarked earth, yet this is precisely why most experts dismiss the Chinese theory. It ignores the core of Mongol spiritual tradition. Genghis Khan was a son of the steppe, deeply connected to the animist beliefs of his people. His sacred bond was with the mountain Burkhan Kholdan, not with a man-made city. Burying him in conquered Chinese territory would have been a profound spiritual disconnect, a violation of the very customs he fought to uphold. The Chinese theory applies a settled, agricultural empire's logic of burial to a man who represented the ultimate nomadic ideal. An even more fringe idea pushes the location into the frozen vastness of Siberia. This theory often stems from a literal and perhaps flawed interpretation of the phrase, the sacred land of his birth. While Genghis Khan was born in what is modern-day Mongolia, some interpretations of ancient maps and texts have led explorers to speculate that his true birthplace was further north, in the southern reaches of Siberia. If that were true, the reasoning goes, then his tomb must be there as well, hidden in the dense taiga or the remote Sayan mountains. The evidence for this is thin, often based on ambiguous lines from poetic texts like the secret history of the Mongols, which are difficult to pin to a modern map. The sheer logistical nightmare of a funeral procession traveling from his suspected death place in China all the way to the Siberian wilderness while maintaining absolute secrecy makes this theory almost impossible to credit. So why do these alternative locations continue to capture our imagination? They persist because the mystery is so powerful that it creates a vacuum, and human nature abhors a vacuum. We feel compelled to fill it with possibilities, no matter how remote. When the central search area yields no definitive answers, the mind naturally wanders to the edges of the map, to the places that seem just as vast and unknown as the legend itself. These theories are a testament not to their own plausibility, but to the enduring, almost gravitational pull of Genghis Khan's final secret. If the answer is not here, then it must be somewhere, even if that somewhere is 1,000 miles away. There is another, more tragic possibility that haunts every professional who searches for lost history. What if the tomb was found and destroyed centuries ago, not by scientists but by thieves? The vast, unguarded landscapes of Mongolia have been a target for grave robbers for hundreds of years. Ancient burial mounds known as kurgans dot the steppe, and for generations, local looters have dug into them under cover of darkness, seeking the gold and artifacts buried with nobles and chieftains. This is not a modern problem, but an ancient trade. Imagine a lone looter in the 17th century, guided by nothing more than a rumor passed down through his family, digging into a small, unmarked mound in a secluded valley. His shovel strikes not dirt but worked stone. He pulls out a golden belt buckle, a jade ornament, a rusted sword. He has no idea of the monumental significance of his find. To him, it is not the tomb of a world conqueror, it is a payday. He and his partners would have stripped the chamber bare in a single night, taking anything that could be melted down or sold. The bones of the occupant would have been unceremoniously scattered and left to the elements. By morning, the greatest archaeological site in history would be reduced to a ransacked hole in the ground, its context destroyed, its story forever lost. The looters would have vanished, their secret kept not by oath but by greed, and the artifacts would begin their slow, silent journey onto the black market. A unique sword might be melted into a bland gold bar. A carved seal would be sold to a private collector in a distant land, never to be seen again. This scenario is an archaeologist's worst nightmare. A professionally excavated site tells a story through layers of soil, the placement of objects, and the forensic clues left behind. A looted site is a burned book. All the context is gone. Even if a golden artifact surfaced tomorrow in a private collection, how could we ever prove it came from the tomb of Genghis Khan? Without the chamber itself, without the body, without the surrounding artifacts that place it in time, it is just another beautiful object. The proof would be as scattered as the looters themselves. This theory offers the most final and desolate answer to the mystery. The tomb is not hidden, it is simply gone, its secret not kept, but obliterated by careless hands, leaving us with nothing but the empty, whispering wind. Perhaps the greatest legacy of this ancient secret is not a hidden chamber, but a living, breathing national spirit. In modern Mongolia, Genghis Khan is far more than a historical figure. He is the father of the nation, a symbol of unity and resilience that binds the people together. His portrait hangs in government buildings and in the humble jurs of nomadic herders. His name is invoked in songs, his likeness stamped on currency, his story taught to every child. This profound reverence transforms the entire quest for his tomb. The search itself has become a vital part of the national identity, a shared, generations-long mission that reinforces their connection to a glorious past. It is a collective endeavor that unites scientists, historians, and everyday citizens in a common purpose, a modern echo of the tribal unification he once achieved. The mystery is not a problem to be solved, but a sacred story to be cherished. For many Mongolians, the ongoing search is the point. It keeps the legend alive, fueling a continuous conversation about their origins and their place in the world. To actually find the tomb would be to end the story, to close the final chapter. The unknown is what allows the legend to grow and adapt, to remain a dynamic, powerful force in the cultural imagination. This is why there is such deep ambivalence towards high-tech excavations. The potential discovery is often viewed not with excitement but with apprehension. The belief is powerful and widely held. To disturb the resting place of the great Khan would be to sever a spiritual link, to break a sacred trust with the ancestor who shaped their world. It would be an act of profound disrespect, not just to a historical figure, but to the very soul of the nation. This sentiment manifests in quiet, daily acts of veneration. In the regions surrounding Birken Koldun and the forbidden Ik Korig, you will not find loud tourist traps. Instead, you find silent pilgrims. Herders guiding their livestock through the valleys will often stop at certain unmarked spots, places that feel ancient and significant. They will make a small offering, a splash of milk or a few coins, and offer a silent prayer. They are not praying to find a tomb, they are praying to the spirit of the land and the great leader they believe still resides within it. The landscape itself is the temple, and every mountain and river is an altar. The mystery is the sanctuary, and to solve it would be to desecrate that holy space. The enduring power of Genghis Khan today lies not in a chest of gold or a skeleton, but in the unbroken line of memory and respect. The greatest treasure is the search itself, a perpetual journey that honors the past by allowing its final secret to rest in peace, guarded by the will of a people who choose to let their founder sleep, forever part of the wind, the sky, and the sacred earth. From a covert funeral procession that silenced all witnesses to the high-tech surveys of the 21st century, the quest for Genghis Khan's tomb is an epic spanning 800 years. We have watched explorers brave the Gobi Desert, scientists scan mountains with radar, and historians decode ancient poetry, all chasing the same ghost. The evidence points overwhelmingly to one place, the forbidden zone of Ik-Korig, a landscape so sacred it was guarded by law and legend. Yet the same cultural reverence that confirms this location also fiercely protects it, reminding us that some secrets are not meant to be unearthed. In the end, the most compelling theory may be the simplest. The perfect secrecy devised by the great Khan and his loyal followers was simply that, perfect. His final command was obeyed so completely that he achieved a different kind of immortality. His true legacy is not just the vast empire he carved onto the map, but the eternal mystery he woven into the earth itself. The empty, windswept valleys of Mongolia are his true monument, a testament to a power so immense that it continues to command silence, keeping his legend forever alive and forever out of reach. What do you think? Has the tomb been lost to time, or is it still waiting, silently guarded by the steppe? Share your own theories in the comments